Okay, so welcome. We're doing this share since Monday. We're not going to have a chance to do it, and we haven't done it online here for a couple weeks. So we've been traveling.
Yeah, in so many ways.
In so many ways. So we decided to do this today. I don't even know where to start is the thing, because I was thinking about that. I am myself obviously going through some massive accelerated processing process, because it's the only time I ever get any kind of cold symptoms is when when that happens. And it's yeah, and it's funny because it's every day. Well, I got back Monday from Peru, and Tuesday I just couldn't. I was sleeping all day probably. I was so tired. And then Wednesday, I felt like crap. Yesterday, it's been funny how fast it's processed through. So it was Wednesday I felt like crap. Yesterday was everything started breaking up. And today it's the constant need to blow my nose and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay. So, and then I had my 2-hour nap this afternoon, which was an unexpected thing, because I was like, oh, I'll just lay down for a half hour. And I'm laying there. You know how when you've slept longer than you thought you were going to sleep, and then you wake up and you're laying there going, oh man, what time is it? Because I feel like I slept a really long time. So
surrender.
So I figure, since I'm going to Sedona on Monday, I'm obviously needing to process stuff really quickly. So I was thinking about when we had our discussions in Peru about healing crises, and I'm like, well, it's not really a crisis. It's just sort of it's very unusual for me to have symptoms. So it's okay, so let's accelerate this even more and support it on all ends so that it just flows on out,
Yeah. Yep.
That being said, the question for us is where to even start.
Yeah. There's so much that has come up. Things finally started flowing today, which is an improvement over yesterday. That was my healing crisis, I guess.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're now at warp 20 now versus warp 2. I mean, it's so funny.
Yeah. And poor little Buster's trying to keep up, but I don't think he's gonna make it much longer. Just got to figure out how to help him with the grace and ease part.
Oh, poor Bubby.
Yeah.
Hopefully he does it quickly.
Yeah, I hope so. That's I'm holding that space, but I'm finally getting the vibe from him that he probably wants help, which that's a whole nother issue, but for me to figure out, not him.
Right. Yeah, and I found out information about some people that we know. It seems to be there's a lot of pets going right now again.
Well, and I've even heard a lot of people.
What was that?
I've even heard a lot of people saying they're sick, and their family's like, yeah, and the next day they're in a coma.
Well, it's time to go. It's time to go, I guess, right?
Well, I'd much rather have it that way than drag it out.
Yeah, me too. Me too. So part of it is this. What has, and like I said, I don't even know where to start, so we'll just start here, because why not?
Yeah.
What has been going on in the most recent time here is that we've sort of hit another acceleration period, it feels like, where we are to Like it's so prominent. And I don't even know if we've talked about this or not. So whatever. I mean, here, because I know you and I have talked about this, but on here.
Right.
Is we have come to this part where it's almost like the higher selves, the higher collective self is saying, okay, because it feels like without any specifics, we've come to a point where in the timeline, in the linear timeline that we have, we're coming up on some kind of really important pivotal moment. And for us to be ready for whatever that pivotal moment is, it's like we have come to this place where there's no more time for bullshitting around. There's no more time for this is uncomfortable to me, so I'm going to avoid it. I'm going to hide in this, I'm going to hide in this role. I'm going to hide in this distraction.
Well, I mean, there's no more excuses. I mean, even, but I'm not myself because I've split into multiple people. That's not even an excuse anymore.
Right. Right. And so everything that is in our individual realities as well as our collective, and that's why I feel like it's like a domino effect, right? Because it's individual into the collective, is everything that is coming to change. It's like, okay, guess what? Anything that doesn't serve you is just crumbling. It's crumbling. It's just falling to waste.
Right. And even anything that might possibly a little bit serve you, it's gone.
Right. Well, if it serves you like 2%, but it doesn't serve you 98%, nope, sorry, cleaning that too. It's like
right. Or 4951.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've talked to a lot of people who are just like, WTF, what is going on? Because my life is falling apart. Like, this is what people tell me. My life is falling apart. I don't understand. Nothing I'm trying to do works.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, if nothing you're trying to do works, then what's really important to do is look in the mirror and say, well, what am I doing that's still hidden in the, in the folds of, oh, this is more comfortable. I got this because I'm comfortable doing it. It's something I've always done. It looks good to everybody else, because these are a lot of the motivations we have.
Right. Or I thought it was the right thing to do.
Right. Right.
That's the really hiding in plain sight, because you feel like you're assessing it and I hate to use this word, but you're judging it.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, this is the right thing. It's not.
Well, or we convince ourselves it's the right thing because of what society thinks, what other people think, right. What, makes us feel good about ourselves because it's an external validation of some sort, right?
Well, and today I was thinking about, all of my actions up to the very recent have been to play out the story that I thought was my highest and best. And it's like when you take that away and you look at the higher perspective and a different story, it all changes. And it's like, which version works now? Well, it's not the version that you see.
Well, and what I suggest to people is, if it's not working, then do something different. Like, right. Pick one thing. Like, because right now it is that fast and that intense. and the people are saying, oh, I'm waiting for a message, or I'm waiting for guidance. And it's like, what your guidance is? If this isn't working, then do something else. It's almost like, right. No, like that. Nope, that was the electronic door. Like, that was the electronic zapper. Nope, other way. Nope, try
it. It's almost like having a shock collar on.
Like those shock mazes that they put mice through.
I tell you, I feel like I've been in one. Nope, not that way. Nope, not that way. Nope, not that way. Nope, not. Yeah. Nope, nope.
And it's almost like, and so we say, well, why would that happen? It's like, well, because we become so embedded in comfort and egoic, like distraction and
and it's
rationalization that,
and we're getting to the core of what doesn't work. So what isn't working are foundation principles.
mm-hmm.
And in order for it to crumble in its entirety, each little facet of it or finger or whatever that touches multiple places in your life doesn't work.
Right.
And imagine if that's the economics of the country or the world, actually.
Well, it really pretty much is, right?
Yeah. So anywhere that touches your life, which, we've embedded it everywhere.
Well, and if you look at so if you take it out of the personal, right? And you look at it in the collective, just even look at the collective in the United States, right? Because it's not just the United States, but that's our biggest point of reference since we live here, right?
Right.
But it's it was several weeks ago, I was talking to somebody, I think that was on my New York trip, who, we weren't really talking politics or anything. He just said something along the lines about our president, and I looked at him and I said, do we have a president? Right? And I started laughing. And he looked at me really confused, because I guess nobody's ever reacted that way before,
Right.
And he's like, well, yeah. And then he started, making some slams or whatever. Now, I didn't say that. I wasn't making any slams about it. I just said, do we really have a president? Right. And then he's like, well, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I said, really? Because to me, if I look at it completely without any involvement, it looks like a big caricature of everything that's wrong that needs to be fixed.
Right.
I said, it's not really a
magnifying glass over it.
Yeah, it's not a functioning government. It's not a functioning political system anymore. It is one bumbling mess of when we can look at it without any judgment, we can laugh at it and go, wow,
what were we thinking?
Right. Right. So if we can look at it that way, and then people get started when you talk to them about politics. But the funny thing is, if you look around the world, this is going on with governments and, political systems everywhere.
Right.
And at the end of the day, for us to really come to realization, to the collective realization of the planet and the shifting, is for us to get to the recognition of we're all the same. We can pretend we're different, but we're all the same. We're all divine beings. We're all the divine embodied as who we are for whatever purpose, no matter what the, socioeconomic system looks like around us. I mean, look, we just came back from Peru. And in Peru, it's okay, so everybody speaks a different language, right? And what was the best was when you're talking to somebody, who's Peruvian, who has very broken English, and then we have very broken Spanish, and yet we find a place to connect that's beyond the words. Right. And that to me is the coolest thing, because then we realize, we're all the same. We look at the same things. We appreciate the same kind of stuff. And
we get down to a certain basic level, and we have the same needs and the same wants and the basics. It's all the same.
Yeah. So all those details, all the socioeconomic stuff, okay, what does the house look like? How much does the house cost? How much does it cost to live, right? Very different on the surface, but it's really not. It is, but that's only such a semantical, 3D representation of whatever the lessons are that have to do with it's funny is when I talk to people about, I was surprised at how inexpensive everything was in Peru, right?
Right. Yeah.
We looked at one day about what the average income is and all that kind of stuff. But then at some point, I hear, when I was looking at, then I hear it makes no difference. So they have a much lower, average income. They have a much lower this, they have a much lower that. But then the thing is, but they are living within the means of their own socioeconomic system that works for them. And they have different priorities, different ways of living and all that kind of stuff. But for us to realize is we're all, at the end of the day, the same. And it was funny because like the last night we were there, I was taking the cab to the airport and I'm sitting in the back seat and, Molly was talking to the guy, the guy who was friends with our guide and like, and they could barely speak, both of them could barely speak each other's language. And it was just funny how like they were getting to the same points of conversation that we always would talk about anyway, so it's like all those like common points, even if our cultures are really different. So I think part of, and I think that's part of why many of us are getting pushed to travel and go into different places now more often, because it keeps us connected to that fluidity of it might look different, but in here it's the same in the heart,
Right.
So, and the thing is, like everybody, so it's funny. So what did we go down? We went down and we got there on the day of their national elections, right?
Right.
And, and what? So we hear from our guide that everybody's required to vote, like, or you get fined, like, and they have polling stuff everywhere, like every building you go into, you see the signs and all that kind of stuff. So then at dinner that night, we're talking to our guide about the elections and stuff. And we asked about the politics and we asked about all kind of stuff. And he's like, what does he say? Yeah, the challenge is I don't really like any of the candidates because nobody really is real anymore. Like they all just have they only have a, an ulterior motive and blah, blah, blah. And he could have been talking about the United States. It was no different. So when we look at those commonalities, the thing is like what I keep on getting inside in my head is to focus on all the commonalities instead of the disparities, because the commonalities are where all the answers play, right?
Right.
It's like we do this in the collective and we start with our own stuff and then see how it translates to the larger picture. But it's all the same kind of stuff. Is everything is crumbling in this very separation-based, dualistic, or in many cases trialistic, realities, and and we're being pushed to, like, what was the message we got? Like, that's been going on for a while now. Is it's time to really do it differently. Like, no more preserving something just because we've always done it this way.
Right. Right.
So what I find really interesting is is how many people, and I've known a lot of people going through this, how many people are on the edge of something new, right? So there's two, it seems like this, there's two sort of groups. One is there are a lot of people who are like on the edge of it's time to do something really different with your life and your reality, and they don't feel pulled to do it, but they don't know exactly what it is. Like they know it's there, but they haven't yet sort of felt the guidance of what that is. And then you have the other group that is getting pulled to do it, but it's so different and so foreign to them that they're very uncomfortable doing it, right? Because then they second guess their guidance. And sometimes, often, it comes along with some major guidance on changing your life in such a dramatic way, which is what the ego then really goes, whoa, like scary.
Right.
Leaving marriages, leaving households, leaving family situations, walking away and then culture, what does culture dictate? Like, how dare you? Like, that's, what's the matter with you? Like, you're having some kind of issue, which then makes us second guess our own guidance. I was talking with somebody this morning about, what were we talking about? I was talking with somebody this morning about how this person's mother has her grandmother living with her, right? And this is a really big one right now. A lot of those of us, well, you had that for a long time, right? So like a lot of those of us in our age group, this is like the first generation where all of a sudden, like our parents are living so long, they end up needing to live with us. So then we have a second set of children in the house.
Yep.
And we do so out of obligation, right?
Right.
So anyway, so I was speaking to this one person whose mother has the grandmother living in the house. Of course, the grandmother's 92 years old, and it's like mom's in her 50s, and you're going, and so the mother is like stuck between a rock and a hard place because she can't go off in her own life and do what she wants to do because she feels like she's obligated to stay helping the mom, right? Helping her mother. And she's got a brother who is off doing their own thing and doesn't do anything as part of it. Yeah, you know this, right? You know the scenario.
Times 3.
So the person I was speaking to had written a letter to her uncle because her mother would never
speak up.
And there's been no response, except that her grandmother had said that her uncle had mentioned that he'd gotten a letter from her and didn't say anything about it. So she said, well, man, maybe obviously he doesn't care.
Right.
So, you know, and then what do you do? So that's the whole thing. These are these big things we're getting faced with. I see this happening with a lot of people.
I'm happy to have finalized that portion.
Yeah. But then people say, oh, well, nobody else is taking care of them. I have to take care of them. Like that means it falls on me because nobody else is taking care of them. It's like, well, no, what said that you have to do it? You know?
Right. It's almost like that unspoken need to sacrifice.
Right. And that value coming from that sacrifice, because everybody says, oh, you're so good. You're such a good person. Of course you would do that. It's your mother or your father. You know, oh God, we even know other people who are going through that too. You know, it's just like all that kind of stuff. And, you know, that was the thing that irritated me. Remember when I went to New York, I had several people ask me about my mother. And I was like, what? My mother doesn't live with me. My mother lives 15 minutes away. She's got her own life. She's only 70, going to be 76 next week. And she's a vibrant 76. And apparently I don't know what she's telling everybody, but I'm like, well, she teaches line dancing at the senior center twice a week. She does Tai Chi. She does pottery. She's always out with the girls. So I don't know what she's telling you, but she's pretty healthy, you know?
Right.
And in this situation, she's got a really good, solid pension, you know, and money that comes in. So she's not destitute.
Yeah, right.
And so it was interesting how my aunt said something to me about, how she's worried about this and this. And my uncle said something to me, and I was just like, why is it they think I'm my mother's keeper? Because my mother and my sister don't have a relationship. And I'm like, you know, that's not my thing. You know, I have the relationship I have with my mother, but I'm also not her keeper. Nor am I going to take on that role, nor will I allow it to take, you know, precedence in my life because I have my own life. My kids just became adults. My husband and I are free. I'm not looking to take in another child. I mean, I won't even get a dog for God's sakes because too much responsibility now because now I'm happy to be free and be able to go where I want. You know, cats are far easier. So I'm like, so my aunt said something, well, you know, your mother's just like nervous about her animals. And I'm like, well, as I've told her, if something ever happened to her, I would make sure the animals were taken care of, right? And I said, but I tell you, and I looked at my aunt, I said, but I tell you, I would put money on the fact that she'll outlive her animals. And my aunt's like, well, really? Do you think? And I said, her 2 cats are already like 14, 15 years old. Yeah. I said, her dog's 9. So what? Maybe the dog's got 8 years left? Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. And I'm like, So she is, and I said, and she's teaching line dancing and going to Tai Chi, and she's doing this, and regardless of how many doctor's appointments she has, she's in pretty good shape.
Right.
I said, probably one of the best shapes I've seen her in her life right now, you know, because she's very conscious about what she eats and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, so yeah, I put money on it that she'll outlive her animals. So I'm not worried about it in the least. And then, you know, well, what if she moved in with you? And I said, nope, she's not going to move in with me. And she was like, what? Well, what do you mean? I'm like, why would my mother need to move in with me? I said, I moved out when I was 18 years old for a reason. And I love my mother, but I don't need to repeat that lesson anymore.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, she's like, well, what happens if she got sick? If she got sick, I said, we would find her a good aide because it's not my job. It's not my job description.
Right.
To have to, and it's not that I don't say that with love. It's not that I'm like discounting, you know, like and saying, well, like, you know, I don't give a crap. It's that I am not going to sacrifice my life to be caretaker to my mother.
Or for anything.
Or for anything, right?
Yeah, it's not even just about her. It's about not sacrificing for anything anymore.
And it was like when my dad got sick before he died, when that was back in 2002. So my kids were 6 and 4 at the time. We knew he was going to die, but we knew he was going to need care until he died. And my sister and I got on the phone, and I said, yep, it's not going to work. I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old in a house, and there is no way, unless I had somebody full-time around the clock taking care of him, that's going to work.
Right.
And I'm working a full-time job, and then some, right? And my sister said the same thing. She had 4 kids. You know, they were teenagers and all that kind of stuff. And she's like, it just wouldn't work in our house. She's like, I don't even think we have the room. So then I said, okay, so then what are our options? Well, we found a hospice care center by Sloan Kettering by her. You know, we looked here and there. And then I was like, well, yeah, that's where we, you know, and yeah, we went and visited him regularly, but we didn't take it on. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we talk about all this stuff, but it's like, this is the stuff that's going on. And then people are like, oh, well, I'm staying with this person. I'm staying with my husband, or I'm staying with my wife because of this, until this. And, or I'm staying in this situation because of this and until this. And when you really look in the mirror at it, it has to do with somehow the obligation feeling like that it makes them a better person by doing it.
Right.
Not necessarily that it's allowing their happiness by doing it, but it's a sacrifice because they feel like they should. And that's what's getting torn away from people right now, because the situations are just crumbling. No matter how hard they try, they're falling to waste. And then it's like, well, there's nothing to hold on to anymore. And then it's throwing people into some major crises because of it.
Right. Right. Yep. I'm right there.
So, you know, and I'm just keep on saying, so let me see it. Like I promise, you know, let me see it. I don't need to have the major crises. But the thing that I'm going through is that, like, well, yeah, I'm getting guided to really change some stuff up, but I don't know what to change yet.
Right.
And I feel like it's happening. So I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to accept change as it comes. I'm going to accept the guidance. I promise, you know, I commit to myself that I'm going to accept the guidance, even if it looks a little wacky or wonky or doesn't fit what my idea of the big picture is, you know. And it feels uncomfortable to even say that because I don't know what that picture is yet consciously.
Right.
Yeah. So, you know, what people are saying to, like, what I've had many conversations even since we've gotten back from Peru is, well, if I know that change is coming and it's time, what do I do, even if I don't have conscious clarity as to what it is? Because I think, so you have, like I said, the 2 groups. One that is, I know what I'm supposed to do, but it's really uncomfortable, so I'm going to avoid it at all costs. Right? Make excuses and delays and whatever. Those are the things where everything's, you know, imploding. And then, but then there's that group of us who are going, yep, I know I'm getting that guidance, but I'm not even sure what the guidance is. It's not clear to me. And that to me is almost even more uncomfortable because you're like, what am I supposed to do? You know?
Right. Right.
So what do you suggest to those who are doing that?
Personally, I've found that it's important to acknowledge the frustration and the fatigue from it all, and the sadness, and then be able to let it up and out and go, so that clears the space for the new to move in. Because the more you hold on to all that, but it's that aside, it's a question of setting your sights to be looking for the guidance of what is different. Because if you're just continually cycling in your, well, I'm waiting for guidance, and I'm, but I don't want to stop doing this, but this is happening, and you're focusing on the crumbling, you're not going to see the new.
Right. That's true. And that's really what's happening, is everybody's focusing on the crumbling right now.
Well, because it's just so massive.
Right. And it's really
it's almost breathtaking.
Well, it's really uncomfortable to the ego. Right.
Right. And it's and you're constantly grabbing for things to stabilize yourself as it crumbles around you, and the things you're grabbing at are crumbling.
Yeah.
So it's not leaving a whole lot of options other than stand in your own truth.
Yeah. And know what that truth really is.
Right. Right, because all the crumbling makes you want to question that. Question who you are. So just let you crumble with it.
And many times what we say is our truth is really what the ego's truth is, right?
Right. Or it's based on a role that's crumbling.
Right. So when you keep on saying, well, I am this, and I am this, and this is my role, and everything else, and it's crumbling right before your eyes, and that is the biggest crisis that's going on with the ego right now, is going, no, because this is what I am. This is who I am. How can that crumble?
Right.
And
then this is my higher purpose even. That's
right.
even more tragic to the ego.
That's right. And that's a big one that's going on right now too. Well, what's my higher purpose? And, and I hear this one all the time is, oh, my higher purpose is to serve. I hear this a lot. This is a huge one in the whole whatever light worker circle. And I'm like, do you know how to serve? Do you know what serving really is? Serving is finding that thing that allows you to embody bliss in every moment. That's what serving really is. Because when we can embody our bliss. It has
nothing to do with sacrifice.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with sacrifice. It has nothing to do with, going and helping the orphans or going to a third world country, unless it really, if that taps into your bliss. Like, I love to travel. Well, what have I been doing for the past 6 weeks? Is constant travel, right? And it's like, do I have a purpose of it? I'm still waiting for that all to come together. I sort of know that, yeah, we've had a lot of energetic stuff, but yeah, and it's part of my work, doing a retreat, holding a retreat, helping with a retreat, looking at a place for a retreat, but it's like, no, because you said a year ago, which was a year ago, when I sat down and said, what is it that I love to do? What is it that really flips my switch? And travel was one of them. Traveling to different places and different cultures, and I just love, because to me it's like, as different as everything appears, we always find that commonality, and the more we have that exposure, the more it's easier for us to get to that commonality with each other, instead of fear and separation.
Right.
So, that's part of it. And there are other things too, but what we don't realize is our purpose in serving is to embody bliss, which means whatever totally brings you joy that you could do 24/7, because it's not work, it's easy and it's fun and it helps you be vibrant, and and all that kind of stuff, that is what our purpose is.
Right.
Even if it's, I don't know, sweeping the sidewalk. But if that's what it does and flips your switch, because,
Exactly.
yeah, because it's like, there's no judgment on that, because we all came here in these different facets, embodied as different facets of the divine, to finish this symphony. And the trick to finishing the symphony is to hit our highest note, or our most perfect note, in each of our individual, representations. And to do that is to truly live that bliss.
Right.
And we're not used to that, because we're used to obligation. We're used to that sacrifice, and to what society thinks and what is a good person, and it's like, well, we talked about this in Peru, which is self-nourishment is first and foremost.
Right. Right. So if that's sweeping the sidewalks, then you better sweep them twice.
That's right.
Or sweep them all over town.
That's right. And if that allows you to live in unconditional self-love at all times, by all means, do it.
Right.
And I always say unconditional self-love, because that's not egoic love of like, I love me even if I have to hurt you, right? Because that's just separation-based, right? This is unconditional love of all that is important is I allow myself to embody this bliss, because guess what? When we, and I explained this to someone last week, is when we can embody that bliss and we are so happy because we can do everything we love doing, right? Everything that makes us tick, then we so easily give to everybody else. We so easily share. We so easily come together with others, because we've got nothing that we hold in judgment or, or criticism.
Expectation.
Right. Or lack. Right. Because we are so full in nourishment and unconditional self-love that we can't help but being this amazing bright light, like a supernova.
Right.
And when we do that, everybody around us is always like, I want to be that too. I want to be that way too.
Right.
That's how we serve. Because when we can realize that, and others around us realize that, well, then they start to be motivated and inspired to find that for themselves as well.
Right. Then we end up with everyone taking care of themselves.
Yes. What a concept.
Right.
So I think one of the biggest challenges is we're so unused to that. We always talk about, well, you should do something of a higher purpose, right? When we say that, you should do something in of a higher purpose. And, my job is to serve. But when we say that culturally, we mean, oh, that means sacrificing myself to help others. And it's like, nope, it's time to change that.
Right.
Right. Because when the well runs dry, it runs dry, and there's no more water that comes from it. So,
well, and there's nobody standing in line going, oh, let me fix this for you.
Right. So when we come from that place of self-nourishment and unconditional self-love, because then we realize our worth in it, right? Our divine worth in that I'm allowed to be this perfect note.
And that's nothing but the perfect note.
Yeah. And that's all that matters. The universe will align to support it in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
So it's the challenge that has been going on for a while, is shifting our consciousness to seeing that, to being able to understand that and support it within ourselves, because it causes a lot of a lot of angst in families and relationships that are built on roles that are sacrificing roles.
Right. Right.
Because one can't exist in the same context as the other. And that's huge, right? Because look at our entire society.
I know. Because once that starts crumbling, it's like, where do you draw the line and go, okay, only crumble up to this level? It's all or nothing.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like you start crumbling that, and then that makes other things crumble. I mean, you talk about the economics, and it's like, well, if it's not your job to do this, 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 and this, whose job is it? Because that has to be done, because these bills have to be paid, and because this has to have this. And it's like, it just turns into madness.
Right. Right. And when you get into situations where, you know, it's not aligned, then the bills aren't getting paid.
Right.
And you're not getting supported and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, that is the biggest message of something's not aligned in that, you know, in that bliss.
Right. Right.
So there are some egoic, you know, decisions in there, you know, that aren't aligned with that. That's the thing that we're getting, like, that's the getting people crazy, right? Because it's like, but I thought this was the right way. I thought this was the way I was supposed to do it, right?
Right.
I thought I was humming along. For years this worked, and now it doesn't anymore.
Or you believed it was working.
Or yes, or I convinced myself it was working.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then that's even more of a shocker, right? Because since you've convinced yourself it was working, it's like, why is everything crumbling now?
Well, and then you get into the whole thing of self-judgment and, well, I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't know how to listen to my guidance, and, you know, beat down, beat down, beat down.
Right. Which is ego.
Right.
And it's like, or maybe you haven't listened to the guidance yet.
Which is probably the case.
It most often is. So, because here's the thing. So what if you are in the situation where you are housing an elderly parent, and you don't have any siblings that are supporting that, and it's really causing the fabric of your reality to crumble. Look at how deep that sense of obligation is, right?
Right. Right.
To say, you know, this isn't working for me anymore.
Right. I mean, faced with the decision of a dog that's dying. I mean, yes, it's the same but different. And it's like, you know, how do you take on the responsibility of saying enough's enough?
Yeah. Yep.
And, you know, having managed two parents through hospice and everything, you have to reach out, because no one's going to come and offer.
Yeah. You know, and then people rage against that. Well, if I don't do it, they're going to end up in a home, and those homes are awful. And, you know, there's all these judgments, and then, you know, that's a terrible thing to do. And it's like, well, no, but first of all, not all of them are terrible, right? You know, not all of them. And if we were more able to say, I support you without having to sacrifice myself, I will make sure you have good care. I will help you to find good care. And we actually spent the time to do it, then there would be a better dynamic, instead of saying, oh, I just, you know.
Well, and you could be there when you're there 100%.
Yeah.
Instead of being, you know, 75%, 50% of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a huge difference. It's in my opinion, the biggest challenge is the transition portion. Not okay, it was this way and now it's this way. It's that getting over that transition.
Right. And saying, how can this be done so I'm not sacrificing myself?
And the person who's participating can say, how can this be done without me sacrificing myself?
Right.
There's more than one person involved.
Right. Right. You know, it's funny because, like, I have a friend who isn't herself in her 70s now. And she had two siblings. I think it was two siblings or three of them. And her mom had Alzheimer's, right? long-term Alzheimer's. So I think it was like a good 20 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Like she lived to be almost 100.
That's unusual with Alzheimer's.
I know. But she did that exact thing, which was, you know what? And you know, her sisters were like, nope, can't do it because of this and this. And she said, well, I'm not going to do it. It's not my choice to take her in. And they found a place for her that they all approved, you know, that they checked up on regularly. They did all kind of stuff. They did go and visit and all that kind of stuff. But but just think about that. Had she taken in her mother 20 years, 20 years.
I mean, that's longer than you keep your regular kids home when you're younger.
I know. So, and she said her mother loved where she was in general, you know, and like, and they were very, you know, in constant touch with the people there and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So there are other options, but we still have this judgment of you would put your parent into a home.
Right.
What kind of child are you? How grateful are you? Know, like there is that judgment, right?
Right. Come on in, Mr. Buster.
So, I mean, there's so many of these things that we can peel back, so many layers.
But I think the bottom line is, and we've talked about this so many times, is you know, trusting that that's the way to go, trusting that guidance. And there's so many that it's so contrary to what they have always believed or been taught or you know, applied to themselves that it doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Well, the question is, why doesn't it feel right? You know, on both sides.
I just think it's because we've kept ourselves so limited in our understanding of who we really are, so small.
Yeah.
That we can't envision beyond here.
Yeah.
And I know that, you know, I guess it was a couple of days ago, I don't even know anymore, when I thought if I were invisible to the 3D, and it's like I just felt so empowered. And it's like, okay, so if I'm invisible, why does that make me more powerful than if I'm visible? So what invisible controls are there here that I'm applying to myself? And it's that, you know, judgment from other people. It's that, oh gosh, if I'm seen, then I'm seen. Then what do I do?
Yeah.
Will there be expectations?
Well, and there's also the perception of there's something around the if I'm visible, others can see me, right? And if others can see me, I have to wade through all their judgments to accomplish my goal, right?
Right.
Because we somehow still connect what we do to how other people think, you know?
Well, because what the results we experience are based on other people.
Right.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow. It's not just your experience. It's the consensus almost.
Right.
Which, gosh, that feels heavy. That's a big burden. That's a big lift.
Yeah.
But that is how we judge our success or our failures, are based on everybody else.
Right. Well, based on the story and who perceives the story and how they perceive it, and, you know, that they understand the whole context of, you know, like there's so many like spiderwebby things, right, that go along with,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just invisible, I can just do it.
Right. Exactly. And it's like all the baggage isn't there.
Right.
And I mean, to me, that felt so free to think of being invisible to the 3D. And it's like, Would I be sad? Probably not, because I could connect to those others that were already invisible.
Right. Right. And the thing is, we look at invisible as a bad thing. That's the interesting part, right? In general. Like I saw, your post about that on Facebook, and somebody's like, oh, I'd be really sad. And I'm like, why?
Yeah. I only saw an upside.
Because you're right. And see, to me, like, take that word invisible out and replace it with transcendent to the 3D.
Right.
So what if we fully existed transcendent to the 3D? See, that sounds good to the ego, right?
Right.
But when we say invisible, it sounds bad. And it's like, but what's the difference? Because as we shift vibration, right, and we start to finish our lessons that we have created in the lower vibrations, we no longer have to exist there anymore. So then we more fully exist in the higher vibrations, and you become invisible to those who are existing in those lower vibrations all the time.
Right.
So when somebody looks at it from that perspective, it's like, oh, okay, well, maybe that's not that bad, right? Because now the ego judges, oh, so that means that invisible is good, right? Versus bad.
Exactly.
But, I have been going through these periods off and on. I don't know if you and I have talked about this. I know I've talked about this with several other people. How I'll go through like this week where I have to be hyper vigilant to be aware of when I'm driving a car, all the cars and stuff around me, because they don't see me. Like I really am almost invisible to them.
Yep.
Like I've had some really bizarre searches, like literally like people are just like right next to me that just go like almost like come right over into my lane. And I'm like, hello, and it took me a while. When it first started happening, I was so perplexed. Like I'm just, tooting along there. And then somebody cuts me off or almost runs into me, or suddenly like I've had people suddenly look up and be like, oh my God, like where'd you come from?
Yeah.
And then somebody else that I knew said to me, so with all the shifting, are you becoming more invisible to others, like, in the car and doing this? And I was like, I never connected those two things. So it does free you up, though.
It really, it creates such an amazing freedom, because it's like all the expectations go away.
Right, because then you don't have to like get lost in the muck of all of it, right?
Right. That's like, okay, so if you're invisible to the 3D, does that mean that you even need, housing, water, electricity, food? Nope. Right. Talk about freedom. That takes you away from that need to be of service to earn that paycheck to pay for these things that just keep you here.
Well, and it's sort of like that. It's when we do all that, right? We're still managing from the 3D, right?
Right.
We're still managing from. It's like I tell people about how like we have so many classes now. There's all these classes about how to be telepathic, how to build your psychic skills, how to do, mediumship and channeling and right? There's all of these elements. And the thing that I always talk about is a great example of how we are so stuck in managing from the 3D is taking a class on telepathy. Because most people look at telepathy as a function, right? Instead of a part of our existence and oneness, right?
Right.
So, and it took me a long time too. So I'm like not judging anybody who does, but this is just the habit that we're in, and it's so ingrained we don't see it within ourselves. It's like saying, because most telepathic, practice classes or whatever do this. So, so you're gonna be you, and in you, you've got to go to this place energetically, right? And from this place energetically, then from your filter, you're going to send this projection from your filter, right, out into the ethers for somebody else to then catch it like a baseball, right?
And
Which
bring it through their filter.
Bring it through their filter and then retranslate it and then
compare
and say, okay, this is what it is. That is so many steps.
Well, and there's so many fail points in there.
So many, especially as soon as you start filtering, right?
Right.
And seeing things and trying, because trying, it comes from separation instead of knowing you've already got it, right?
Right.
So, I mean, so what happens is as we work more in oneness, like as we go back to the remembrance that we're all from like one single consciousness, and we exist more and more in that singular consciousness, we can find our collective, our combined commonalities, right, from that collective consciousness and just pull it here.
Right.
There's no intermediary steps. So what happens is, and I say this, I'm like, I used to try to do it, and now it's so easy that I don't even think about it. But now many times, we'll just be sitting there. It's like, oh, like, we have the same thought, or we express something the same way, or we get the same idea. And it's like so aligned and so easy and effortless because we're not trying to do anything. We're just existing in that singular consciousness, even if we're still expressed in separate facets of, embodiment, right?
Right.
So then there's no such thing as having to try to do telepathy because then you are simply on the same wavelength.
Right.
And I laugh about that because I've allowed that in my household for so long that my kids and my husband are so used to that connection most of the time. And it's like when they get in their mind is when they sort of back out of that, and then that makes it more difficult. But when we're flowing, like when we were on vacation together earlier this summer, like we would finish each other's sentences. We would all be thinking the same thing, like even about things like, oh, who wants, what do we want to do for dinner? Where do we want to go? And it was like every time we'd all say the same exact thing. And to a point where we were laughing and my kids were like, when we get back from this trip, we're going to have to be in opposite points of the house for like a week so that we can, get out of this like singular mind, because we start thinking there's something weird about that,
Right.
It's the Borg.
The collective.
Right. So, and so, yeah, it's so that, again, it's just an example of that habit of managing what is beyond the 3D and this level of density and separation from the 3D and this level of density and separation, and how it really doesn't function optimally when we do that.
Right. And you would think that achieving the higher level and then coming and interacting at the 3D level would be easier. Would be easy. You'd think that the hard part is being at the higher levels. But I don't think so.
Well, no, it's not. Because the more we exist in the higher level, the easier it is, because we're not struggling to keep separation in place, right?
Right.
And the more we stay at that, because the higher level of consciousness we get into, the more unified we become.
Yeah, there was the yawn.
Yeah. And so it's easy because we're removing, going back to the partitions, right? We're removing partitions. And every partition that we hold in separation is more energy we have to put to hold that separation. So we're like, we don't even realize what level of, like, how much energy we're putting into just existing in this representation and separation. And the easier, the more we do, the more we allow ourselves the oneness, the easier it is. And I always come back to, doing a float tank, doing the float tank.
Float tank.
And for anybody who's watching about this, float tank they call them also sensory deprivation tanks, because it is highly salinated water. So you float right on the top, like you're on a bed, and the water is the exact temperature of your body. The air around is the exact temperature of your body. So there's no distinguishing between where my body ends and where the water begins or the air begins. And then, so the first step, in my experience,
and it's dark.
In the dark, right.
And quiet.
Right, and quiet. So you have nothing to use as reference in separation. And so the first thing I noticed when I had that experience was I could feel where I was holding tension in every muscle of my body. And it was so easy to say, because I had no distractions, to just say, oh, yeah, let go of that. And I could feel them like muscle by muscle just go, psh, psh. It was like all just releasing. And that's not even a conscious thing, because that's how we hold our bodies every day, right? That I had to sit there and consciously think, shh, let go, just let go. There's no need to hold this there. And I could just feel like that easy. And then once that happened, it was so free, so freeing, because all I was consciousness. And I could float wherever. I could go through dimensions. I could see all these different things. And, and there was no, of course I played in that going, oh God, I don't even feel like having a body. And can I move my arm? Can I move my head? What would it feel like? And I would just move something and be like, okay, that's so weird. Because, when you're in that place of complete, consciousness without physical, you realize how much of a distraction physical separation actually is.
Right.
And how much we're sitting here talking and realizing, not even consciously thinking about it, but, we're holding our muscles in a certain form, right? So that we could sit upright on a chair or a couch or whatever. And that has a certain, a certain softness, a certain color, a certain texture, and that we're registering, right? As well as the air around us and the temperature, any smells, anything in our our peripheral. And just think about all those things just there. And that's just like the beginning of all the stuff that we are registering in every moment.
Well, so no wonder babies are born crying.
Right. It's a little
too much.
Like too much. Right. Because I'm sure the womb is like a big float tank.
Right. Maybe not quite as quiet.
Right. But yeah, so if we think about that, the more we get to that place of letting go of our, need to stay in these separate functions and, that's why I was thinking when you say it, so you say it from that context, and it's like, okay, so then think about all the energy we're putting into this, right? And then we say, well, I want to come out of that and then come back into it. And I want to manage it from there, even though it's a unity kind of, whatever activity, which is living in higher consciousness, living in higher vibration. Then we're expending twice as much energy because we're trying to maintain this and do that at the same time. Yeah. So that would be the staying visible, right? From a transcendent vibration to what's in the 3D, it would be the effort, because we think we're supposed to be visible, continue to stay visible, to use your terminology, right?
Right.
Because we think that not being visible is a bad thing.
Right.
Because being visible, though, is being really fully immersed in the separation. But realizing that once we get into this place where we can transcend that, others who are in that transcendence place will totally see us, and it's a lot easier. It's almost like being in a crowded, football stadium with, thousands and thousands of people, and everybody's wearing brown, and one person is wearing scarlet red.
Right.
And or two people are wearing scarlet red. Well, if you're all wearing brown, how are you going to find each other? But if you're both wearing scarlet red, how easy is that? Because now you've transcended the vibration of that color where everybody else is existing.
Right.
Oh yeah, that feels really good. So if we freed ourselves to stop judging that and saying that's a bad thing too, what if I just allowed myself to transcend it, exist in it without needing to be so visible and prominent? And it goes to this place of saying, because my importance and my value has nothing to do with how visible I am in the 3D.
Right.
Ooh, that's a really big statement too.
And along with that goes trust.
Yeah. Because then the ego kicks and screams and says, well, what do you mean? Because that means we lose our identity. We lose our, what we represent and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, and look at how free that is when we do that.
Right.
It's huge. Wow. That's a lot. I was like, I don't even know what we're going to talk about today. But,
right.
And everything that's crumbling right now is the stuff that supports us staying very visible in the very dense 3D. That's really, as a whole,
right.
falling away as well.
Right.
And it goes back to like when we were in Shasta, right? Hidden in plain sight. Why is it hidden in plain sight? Because it's just a different vibration, right?
Right.
And then like in Peru, where we, like what you got, that perception, there's like all the marveling about the ruins and how the rocks are so perfectly put together without any mortar. And then you're understanding that they started as crystalline and then dropped in density.
So
yeah, and made that representation in the 3D because the crystalline is all about consciousness, right? Where the stones were more like coming into a heavier density of separation on the earth that we see today.
Right.
And what we saw in Peru, which I keep on seeing in sessions and stuff, is that ground shaking and, the whole opening up and everything coming online, meaning not really coming. I think it's almost like we're coming back online as well. We're embodied, that we start remembering that, like, whether you want to call it a dimensional overlay, a higher range of vibration that exists in front of our faces. But until we allow ourselves to be in that space, that range of vibration, when we don't see it or experience it or can interact with it. That's what we're starting to do.
Yeah.
And of course, when we do that, then nothing that we see, because then that goes back to hidden in plain sight. It goes back to trust with your guidance over your eyes. Like, don't trust what your eyes see.
Right.
Because what your eyes see, your eyes are programmed to see what's in the 3D. Only. So if you're trying to see 5D, if you're allowing yourself to see 5D, you're not going to see it with your physical eyes.
Right.
Well, I'm so glad we had nothing to talk about today.
I know. And it's such a small thing too.
It's such a tiny little thing. Tiny little bit.
Oh,
I'm going to put this on pause so I can go take a bio break. Hold on.
Leaves for Russia tomorrow.
Okay. So the other thing that occurred to me in the bathroom is that is why, and I know I've said this, but it was just also another realization. But that is also why a lot of people are feeling some weird physical shit going on.
Yeah.
Right? Because the body is built to exist in the 3D. As it's rebuilding itself to be able to exist in a crystalline, a higher vibrational thing and still exist in separation, but in a different form, we have a little bit of, the more we resist, the more challenging it becomes. So there are many who are having physical challenges where their body feels like it gets weighed down, right? Gets extra weight.
Right.
there's so many knees, feet, and hip issues about moving forward, but part of that is feeling like you're chained to the earth.
Right.
Um,
Or, you know, what I was feeling yesterday was chained to the mast of a sinking ship.
all right, I have it. So, and this is like, so even this thing that's a representative of that looks like a cold, which I don't think it's a cold because it doesn't feel like one. It's just the symptoms of one, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But think about it. What if the viruses that exist in the 3D serve keeping the body in that range of vibration?
Yep.
Which then causes friction, right? And symptoms and stuff like that. So I'm like, yeah, okay. And all I've been doing since this sort of came on is just okay, flow. And I feel a very marked difference like every day. It's like, oh, okay, I'm not even going to be crappy or miserable. I'm just be like, okay, I'm just flowing with it. If I need to take a 2-hour nap to allow the flow, I'm going to do a 2-hour nap to allow the flow.
Right, right.
So, all right. So what do we focus on? The ability, allowing ourselves to become invisible, right? Allowing ourselves to transcend the 3D in an easy flowing,
Trusting.
smooth, enjoyable way.
Maybe it goes back to that adding the natural in.
What do you mean?
Remember how we did last Monday talking about how it's second nature to do this?
Right.
It's trust that it's the natural progression. Trust that
Allowing ourselves to do it from the natural, like oneness place versus trying to manage it from the 3D.
yeah, because how do you manage that from the 3D? How would that ever work?
Right. And that's what the mind says. Oh no, we have to do this, or it can't be this, it can't look like that. Or
Right.
if it's this is what it really is, it's not that, Yeah.
And the answer is within us.
Yeah. To allow an easy transition too. In that way. That's nourished and supported.
Flowing.
And easy. And fun.
Right. Yeah, I can feel that starting already.
Yeah. All right. You ready? Let's go and do anything related to that.
Yep. Okay.
That was really cool.
I feel like I was so far out there.
And I was like, oh, this is what I'm going to be doing all weekend, I'm sure.
Right.
I saw actually, was interesting was, we kept on in Peru, the snake, the puma, and the condor, right?
Right.
So I saw this huge snake, and it was sort of like this representation of, I don't know, it was just like, it said to me, let me help you, right? And it, like, I was standing next to this tree, and it wrapped itself around the tree, and it was like, well, let me help you. And I said, and it was like, because the mind thinks, well, what do you mean? It makes me think of the Jungle Book. Trust me.
Right. With the eyes swirling.
Yeah. And I was like, okay. And so it was like the snake represented the management of the 3D separation. And it basically opened its mouth and just sort of ate all the stuff that would hold us down in vibration to maintain that separation and heaviness.
Oh, that's nice.
That was very nice. Yeah. And then I was like, well, don't just do me. Take care of everyone. Like, this is a collective thing. Go ahead. Right. And I sort of saw it like encompass itself around the earth and just sort of filter it through, because then it came in, of course, the back end. And then it was a completely different representation. And that was really nice. That was very cool. Yeah, it felt really nice. I felt that on such a cellular level too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I felt like I just settled into this place, and it was just like I could have easily just stayed there. And it was almost like the darkness that we talked about in Peru. Hello, little Charlie. I have both dogs now. Oh, that was really good. I'll have to definitely revisit that one.
That was powerful, yeah.
And we won't have one of these next week because you'll be gone.
Unless something comes up.
Yep.
Because that never happens.
Right.
Yeah, that was incredible. So everybody sort of sit on that and let that one flow.
Right.
Staying consciousness about all of that and how to allow ourselves to transcend. If you don't want to use the word invisible.
Transcend. Right. Let's be politically correct.
Right. Let's make the ego feel better about itself.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us, and we'll see you next time.